Hey everyone, Warwick's here. So, a little bit of a different video from me. This is not a WoW related video, it's not an acapella reaction video. It is actually going to be a video about Fellowship. So Fellowship is a newish game, still in early access, that you can buy for like 20-25 bucks off Steam. That is basically takes World of Warcraft M+ type systems, layers it with kind of a ARPG progression system that's out there. This game is in early access. The devs have obviously looked at things that make things like WoW M+ good and tried to expand on it and make things like the ARPG progression aspect and also take good on it. So why am I making this video? Well, I kind of wanted to do a review, as the video title says, now that I've put about 30 to 40... let me check my Steam number on it real quick. Let's see. I have, about 30 hours into Fellowship now. I've played a variety of the characters. A couple I've tried to mess with and just don't find the gameplay loops interesting. But I wanted to kind of do a somewhat comprehensive review from someone that is very into WoW Mythic Plus. I'm sitting at 3190 this season, about to try and aim for 3200. I have two characters that I'm about to hit 3k on. So I'm someone that's really invested into the WoW Mythic Plus system in general. So that's what this video is going to be about. Is this game going to be something that you should invest your time in? If it's something that you do want to invest some time in, what are some things to look out for? What are some things to kind of be on the mindset for and go from there? Now, as I record this is November 7th that I'm recording this. They did just release a patch that put some new buffs out for some characters, so I've yet to fully test them, mainly revolving around this character here. Now, the one thing that you will notice that's different from World of Warcraft is that they have characters that are single archetypes. Now, I have an upgraded look for this character, but they all have like their own kind of backgrounds, their own style of play, things like that. So it kind of talks about this, a little bit of lore of the character, and then the play styles right below it. So you can always read these over if you want to get more in-depth play styles. But because I'm WoW-brained, I'm going to be kind of comparing this to characters that I find in WoW or old archetypes that I put in WoW, since this is coming from someone that is very much a WoW player. So Helena is the main tank character that I play. I actually quite enjoy her a lot. She's somewhat straightforward to play once you figure out the mixture of cooldown timings, and then some of her utility skills remind you very much of things like a prot warrior and a prot paladin. Obviously, big ass shield will do that. She has a charge like a warrior does. She has a throw shield like a paladin does, and then she has what's called a toughness meter that will allow you to maintain your defensive mitigation. Now, she just did get some buffs recently, so she's probably going to become quite powerful. I haven't yet to play with her, but it is something that I'll probably do in this video, just a quick Helena dungeon run to kind of show you how fast these dungeon runs can be. The other tank that is out right now is Mako, who reminds me a lot of, like, obviously from a look standpoint, there's like obviously Monk, but she also has a little bit of, I would say, Vengeance Demon Hunter to her, because she does have like this kind of ramp up into her mitigation, but then once it's up, it's very hard to kill her. So actually not Vengeance Demon Hunter, it's more like Blood Decay. Once Blood Decays get their bone shields up, they're really good, but she has like utility and mobility much more akin to a Monk. Obviously, you can see they classify her as quite hard to play. I think she's the only 4-star character. No, Tarek is. We'll talk about him in a minute. But obviously, one of the currently listed in the roster that they have, the two hardest characters to play. So she uses ability combo mechanics, which very similar to like Monk gameplay, where things like Breath of Fire only work in combination with Kick Smash. This is kind of the same thing here. I've not played a lot of her. I've tried her out on like the target dummies and stuff like that, and I just don't fully enjoy the gameplay loop. So as far as tank goes, obviously you can see I put some time into Helena with this badass armor. Go from there. Now, currently these are the only two tanks in the game, as you can see, but the developers have said that they are looking to do like a season update, which would release a new character. I'm assuming if it's not even two, it'll be either a tank or a healer that's coming in, because obviously we see where we're at now. Fellowship is a 4-man person team. It's not 5 mans. So you have 1 tank, 1 healer, 2 DPS. So it makes sense that there are more DPS to go through. I'm going to skip down to the healers. Let's start with Vikor. Vigor, very much akin to a holy priest. Now, I'm not saying these characters are just like holy priests. So, for example, Vigor does have like the fantasy that he portrays and things like that are very much like thing, but he has like this orb system here that he uses to empower his spells, and his abilities and stuff like that will play off of that. Now, I'm not going to do necessarily a specific character guide, but it just goes to show that like every character has like, they're not copying the WoW resource system. For example, like Helena has this toughness bar here. See, I've done quite a bit on her already, not like mega high level, but I've done quite a bit on her. And you can see Mako has right here her combo ability stuff within the UI. So every character has like their own like resource mechanic that is used. But Vigor, from perspective of like how he heals, he plays a lot like Holy Priest does in World of Warcraft. With a mix of Holy Paladin in there as well, because the builder spender style is very much a Holy Paladin style, but the gameplay loop of like how the spells look and kind of the approach to healing that Vigor takes is very much like a Holy Paladin side of things. He's very much like a reactive healer. He's a character that you can go in and not have to be like super proactive with. He is quite strong right now as a healer. I would argue between him and the other healer which one is stronger. I think both of them are good for very, very different reasons. Let's talk about the other healer, and that is Sylvie. Best way to describe Sylvie is like a mix of Resto Druid with some Preservation Evoker style aspects to her. So obviously Druid is very obvious because Daughter of the Forest, Druid, very much a play style. She is got these aspects where you can see right here, she has these butterflies that you can throw on other players. For example, I can put one on this person here. And what it does is healing over time setup, so very much like a rejuvenation. And then say like on this character, I can use 2 butterflies. As you can see, 2 of them go out there, and they will do a small setup, heal over, do a burst heal over time, and then do a hot over the aspect. So very heal over time oriented. You have to be very proactive with her and her setup. And then she does have, and as all healers do, they do have a couple of damage abilities, but it's not the main thing that you would do. So basically you want these vines to go out as much as humanly possible, because the more of them you have out, the more your butterfly healing is going to do from your butterflies. And then this big butterfly here, she can keep on herself to give her mana reduction, or she can put it on a friend to give them extra healing from the butterfly. So she has a lot of really good utility, but she's very, very proactive. You have to learn the damage profiles in order to be able to effectively heal dungeons. You don't have a ton of like super fast reactive healing and things of that nature. So I quite enjoy Sylvie as someone that does like sort of proactive healers. Obviously I play a lot of Preservation Evoker. I've been looking to get back into the Resto Druid potentially next expansion, and then of course Mistweaver Monk. Not so much proactive, but Mistweaver Monk always there. Alright, so let's talk about the damage dealers. So let's start with the 2 melee characters. So they have Taric. Taric is, the best way to describe him is like a mix of, from a visual perspective, a mix of Enhancement Shaman with a lot of lightning being used. Obviously he's called the Thunderlord, with an old Arms Warrior playstyle of Swing Timer manipulation. So Taric revolves a lot around Builder Spender and swing timing mechanics. So he's like a mix of, I would say, like that Enhanced Shaman Maelstrom mechanic with a swing timer of that like classic TBC Arms Warrior gameplay style, where you were abusing swing timer mechanics to make sure things like slam, heroic, strike combos could do like big burst damage and stuff like that. So he's very hard to play, but if you can play him well, he does do quite a bit of damage right now. He's pretty well tuned. And I think is a character that is good early on. As you are getting gear, he can do a lot of damage early, but then once you actually start getting some gear, and you can play him well, depending on the build styles that you go into, you can find builds that are going to make him very powerful. I don't think he's the best damage dealer out there right now, but I would put him, he's definitely the better of the two melee. But this right now is if you're looking at the highest level of dungeons being timed, it's 2 ranges to play. The other one is Mara, who I've played quite a bit of. Mara, very much subtlety rogue coded. Has some very cool things. She has poisons that you don't have to that you don't track as like a buff. You just do them basically out of a stealth mechanic. She has like a fan of knives type of ability, a backstab style ability that allows her to generate combo points and energy, and you spend those combo points on different things of that nature. Now, the one cool mechanic that I really like about Mara is that her stealth, or it's called Brooding Shadows, you can go into it, but then unlike in WoW where like you have to use Vanish or some other, like for subtlety, I'm sure there's other stealth-like mechanics that where your ability to do stuff as if they're out of stealth, you can literally just straight up, you know, it has like a Rupture-like ability with Hemorrhage, as you can see a Crimson Vials type ability. And then I can go right back in and then put it in like 2 different poisons going. So there's a volatile poison, there's a seething poison, you know, so there's these different things that you can do. Now, she's a lot of debuff tracking, which is kind of annoying because as you can see, there's not like a great way to track debuffs on multiple targets. Like if I come down here, for example, into this multi-target area, let's come on. So let's come over here to this, for example. So I'm gonna, out of stealth, you usually want to do that. And then you go here and then stealth and come again. So as you can see, now I've got 4, but I can only, there's no like good way to track it. So I'm kind of just guessing on how I'm gonna track all these poisons. And there's not really a good way to do it in a way that's like influential. So that's like a big drawback for her, but if you like a stealth rogue style gameplay, you can definitely do that. We'll talk about these in just a little bit. That said, Mara is a character that really struggles early on to do a lot of damage. She really relies on stats, getting a lot of stats, particularly I believe haste and crit are big ones for her. But she is a character that once you can get her kind of geared up and you gain more power as a character, she becomes quite strong. And let's just face it, she cute, and we love a girl in fishnets. There's a little gooner to it. All right, now let's talk the 3 ranged characters. We'll start with Artios. Artios is got the visuals of a fire mage, but the playstyle of an affliction warlock. So Artios is a character that uses a lot of damage over time effects to build up, and he has this unique mechanic called cinders. You can kind of see them a little bit below here, but again, we'll just kind of go over to a single target. So for example, you know, he can throw like this, and then you have like your Infernal Wave, and yes, that is Fire Frog. So you can see like these cinders are being built up. And then you can use this ability called Detonate, which will detonate your dots that you have active on the character, and then blow them up for more burst damage. So Artios plays a lot like Affliction Warlock, where you want to get as many of those dots up as much as possible. And you do have some AoE ways to do it. Fireball has a thing. Apocalypse is a long cooldown, but a big area, so you can get almost all the enemies in, and it puts your Searing Blaze dot on characters. You have this Pyromania, which puts your Engulfing Flames on multiple characters. So you have like these cooldowns that are in the 90-second range, Pyro being 30 seconds. You can get 2 of them off every now and then. So you have to time his cooldowns quite well, but if you can achieve it and then get off some really fat detonates, then you're going to be in a very, very good position. He's a tough character to play early because the longer mobs live, the better damage Artios does. So at lower levels, he's going to look like a very rough damage dealer to have around. There's a good chance that on some like in full dungeon runs, you will do less damage than your tank. But once you kind of get a lot of haste built up into him and you get your talent point set up to start doing your build, and we'll talk about talents in a minute, then he really starts to find his place and his ability to shine. So he's a character that like you accept some pain in the early in order to gain a lot in the late game. All right, let's talk Rime, probably the most popular DPS right now because she's cute. And she's just flat out good. So Rime, I would say, is a mix of Devastation Evoker and Frost Mage would be the best way to describe it for those that are the WoW brained. So she has abilities that are kind of like, obviously, Frostbolt, as you can see, very much looks like the Frost Mage Frostbolt. She has this Cold Snap ability, which you can use on the fly and just does a little bit of an ability here. And then she has this Freezing Torrent, which generates your resource here and also one of your orb charges. There's Bursting Ice, which you can use, again, to set up like a dot, and it procs a Cold Snap. You have a Frost Ward, which gets, your stuff. And, of course, you have your Ice Dash. Yeah, so you slide a little bit on the ice. Give your Interrupt. But then you have something like this Glacial Blast, which you would use when you have your 2 orbs up, and it does big damage. And then you also have your Ice Comet, which when you... So this is like an energy bar that like helps you generate your rewards. So you can see, like, for example, you have the comet come down. You're going to be frostbolting and using your things, and then you use your Freezing Torrent to help speed up your thing, and then you Glacial Blast. I'm assuming like Glacial Blast is more single target, has some explosion damage around it, but most single target, and then you would use Comet and AoE. So, like I said, very much like a Frost Mage with Frostbolt and Cold Snap. Then you see Glacial Blast is much like Glacial Spike, but then like Ice Comet is like a frosty version of Flamestorm, with Freezing Torrent being like Disintegrate. So yeah, I haven't played a ton of her, but she is very, very popular. As you can see, I have actually no item level on her. I have no dungeon score, so I haven't played her a lot. I don't hate her gameplay loop. I actually think it's quite fun. It's just not one that I've invested a ton of time in because I've tried out Artios, I've been playing Mara, and then there's my guy that I love so much, Elarion. Elarion, very much a hunter coded in WoW, but with a little bit of a twist. So, no pets with Elarion. So the survival BM hunter, he's very much marksman hunter coded. And what he does is he actually, let me come down here, because it's going to be the good way to do it. And yes, he does roll like monks do. So Elarion in like AoE situations is like really interesting because he has this main kind of high wind arrow ability that will actually ricochet off targets, which then set up like a multi-shot volley. And then you have things like your traditional rapid fire, a focus shot, which is actually focus generator, so it's much more akin to steady shot. And then you have celestial shot, which is set up by like an arcane arrow type ability, basically. So, and then of course you have your volley of arrows. So he plays obviously with a lot of celestial themes. So there are things that he does that will allow you to do that. You have like a small debuff that you can put on multiple targets that do a little bit of extra damage when you hit a target, for example. So like if I do this, you can see it counts down. It's doing just a little bit of extra damage to him. And you can see Starfall Volley did quite a bit. He has his own little like personal bloodlust button in Sky Strider's Grace, and then every character has an ultimate ability. Now this is something that you build up over time. We're going to stick to Elarion because this is the one I know the best, but every character has an ultimate ability. So for Elarion, for example, it's Event Horizon, which gives you 15% more damage. You get cooldown acceleration, which is their way of saying hasten cooldowns. But that acceleration is equal to the haste that you have. So as you can see, he's like very much set up with your haste. So you get your cooldowns back quite fast. And then all your stuff is reduced by 50%. And then you also get some inner workings where like High Wind Arrow and Heartseeker's Barrage work together really, really well. So for example, one of the main things that you'll do is say like this guy right here is like a target that you're going to be prioing down. So what you would do is a lot of the times you'll High Wind Arrow straight into a Heartseeker's Barrage, and then you get the ricochet damage, and then go from there. And then you just basically kind of play around with it from there. Well, when you're in Event Horizon, you get extra CDR so that you can do that. So it has single target and AoEs. Like all the ultimates do a very, very good job of giving both single target and AoE aspects. And then of course you have your mount, which you can jump on out of combat. It is not an in-combat situation. It's not meant for mobility and things like that. So that's the list of characters. It's very limited right now. Some things that I would like to see. Jesus, come on. There we go. Some things that I would like to see from the character list. Obviously more tanks, more healers. I think from a tank perspective, something that plays much like a bear, like a berserker, guardian style type character that maybe has like a very high HP pool, but can take a lot of damage. Like Helena does a lot of blocking, Mako does a lot of channeling through her combos and through self buffs, and she has some self healing. Helena has no sustain, so having a berserker like character that, like, the more they take, the more damage they do, or the more damage they mitigate, because it's like a rage type effect. I would love to see that. From a healer perspective, I fully expect them to do something like they have a very reactive healer, they have a very proactive healer. I expect them to find something that's kind of in the middle, where you would run like a resto shaman style character, maybe uses the water. They obviously have light, they have nature. You can play with elements there and do something that does like flame healing or something, just to make it like really stand out, but it plays a lot like a resto shaman does. Or if you want like a damage to healing converting type character, just to kind of push your gameplay in a different level, that'd be interesting to do. I don't know how well it works in a situation like this, where the healers do not have interrupts and they have they only have like 2 or 3 damaging abilities. But you could get set up basically to use those 2 or 3 damage abilities, and they do a little bit of that. They do damage and then convert some of that damage into healing. I think that could be interesting. From a damage dealer standpoint, I would love personally to have them, like, they've got a big 2-hander guy. They've got the agile rogue bender that does shadow damage. They've obviously got a Thunderlord style guy. You know, we're hitting frost, ice, and then celestial. So like from a element standpoint, they've kind of hit a lot of it. But I would love to have something that is like super high mobility, Demon Hunter style, or I would really like something that is like Unholy DK like, where it's a lot of damage over time effects in melee, and you use your melee abilities to extend those dots or extend those diseases or something like that. Kind of a Necromancer style play, which is kind of what Unholy DK and Midnight is trending towards. Something like that I think would be a good addition to the melee spec. Like I said, you got your kind of big bruiser looking style guy and your swift, you know, stealthy person, but sometimes you can just have characters that are really strong melee that are not, you know, don't have to fit into like the specific archetypes. So that's where something like Demon Hunter I think works really well. Is it's, you know, the quick, the agile, a monk style character could also work well, although they kind of have that with Mako. You know, these characters that are just like, they're nimble, but they aren't there. But then you also need room for more kind of raw meathead style approaches to melee, which, you know, a lot of melee play styles are kind of seen as that way. If you're not the nimble, cunning, agile person, you're a giant fucking meathead. See all the strength users in WoW. Now that said, if they wanted to do pet companion AI, a survival hunter like character would also be really good. Whether it's a 2-hander or dual wielder, but you have a pet companion that also interacts with it a little bit, that could also be quite interesting. All right. So how does Fellowship work? Now that we've kind of gone through the characters, overall, I think they've done pretty well. The tuning on them is actually pretty well. They all have like obvious strengths and weaknesses. For example, like I said, just looking at it from here, Sylvie's a very proactive healer. So once you learn your damage patterns and you know where they're going to come from, you can do a lot of healing very, very quickly, and they just increased her damage a little bit, so she does even more damage contribution to a group. Vikor, they had to nerf his damage because he was doing more than some DPS, but it has very reactive healing, so you can kind of be prepared for almost every situation. So I like the balance and the dichotomy there. But like Artios, late game Crusader, like very much a late game type character from a range standpoint, because the stuff that, as stuff lives longer, he's going to do more and more damage through his damage over time effects. Mara, same thing. She's like a late game Crusader. She's very rough early on. She's not the most powerful rogue. Doesn't have like super mega burst damage, which is a lot of people assume with rogue through D&D and through you know, stories of, you know, rogues that are out there. Go from there. Tarek, I think, is pretty good early game and pretty good at the mid game levels. Late game, I think he falls off compared to Rime, to Elarion, and even Tamara. But he's very, very, very complex to play. So the reward that you get for playing him at high levels, like, you really have to work hard for it, which I think is, for some people, they love that idea. For a lot of people, it's going to be tough, but it goes there. Rime is good early. She's good late. She's just, to me right now, she's just the best damage dealer. Elarion is also very steady. His damage early on, like when you're building up your skill sets, is very good, but also very late, and go from there. But like, there's room for some more damage profiles to be found your way through the damage dealing. Characters that are just like super bursty. Like Artios is really bursty when he has his detonate and cinders up. Rime can be very bursty when she has her orbs up, but like Taric is like super mega bursty in my opinion. But then like Mara, fairly consistent damage, and Elarion is super consistent damage. So finding another consistent damage profile for like a melee, I think is really good. You could find like a good ramp DPS for melee. That's where something like a disease, poison type person goes into play. But then again, you run into the same issues where early on, when stuff dies quickly, is what it is. All right, so we're going to stick with Elarion because he's kind of the character that I'm maining right now. He's the one I've spent the most time on. So the gameplay loop, let's do this. So there's a couple of different ways you can actually do dungeons in Fellowship. When you're first starting out, when you're just kind of starting with a character, so for example, let's just say, let me just swap to Rime real quick. And would fix your key binding and stuff. So because I have like no item level, no dungeon rating, you're going to do a quick play game. And basically what this does is this just tries to find you the fastest game possible. It's very easy. It's the equivalent of what I would dub Mythic Zeros, where you see some of the mechanics that are there. Actually, I wouldn't even call it Mythic Zeros. I'd dub it like normal dungeons. They're going to be very quick. They're extremely hard to fail. There's no timer involved. It's just a matter of, do you have the right amount of mobs killed? Because you can't just like speedrun them. You have to kill a certain mob count. Let's do this. Wait, no. Glacial Blast will go on 1. Comet on 2. That's the other thing that you do. In order to assign abilities, instead of going into a spell book, you right-click the button, and then you can choose them. So let's put this here. This is always my interrupt button. This is always my defensive. This is always my movement ability. And then we'll make this bursting ice. So just to, like, for example, I'll just do a quick game. Now, the cool thing about Fellowship is with the quick play version is that you can get in pretty quick. Obviously, if you're playing a tank or a healer, your queues are going to be a lot faster than if you do DPS, because most people play DPS in this game. They do not... they generally won't play tank or healer. Now, I play all the roles as I do in World of Warcraft. I enjoy Elarion the most, but Helena's my second most played character. Artios I've played quite a bit of. Sylvia, and as you can see, right in. Now you're going to notice some things about a dungeon that are similar to what WoW setup is. As you can see, we have a kill count. And we have a start area, but there's no timer for quick plays. You come in here and you just have fun. You just get to experience the game in kind of its like most basic form. As you can see, we have enemies. Yep, we got things. Now the cool thing about this is that if you're like a healer, for example, Tawali here, who's joining us on this run. Yeah, so like for example, he's pulling a bunch of mobs here. So I'm going to focus. You can see we got different mechanics, and they're very well telegraphed here. And I've never played this character before, so like I'm obviously struggling. But you can see all the abilities are very well telegraphed. Like this right here is actually a healing thing that the characters do. And then go from there. Now you can see we're mounting up. We find our next pull. This is a very, very short dungeon. You can see there's some characters down here that have gas, and what you can do is you can push the V key and it'll actually put your kick timer on the nameplate for everyone to see. So when if this character were to do something, I can kick that and it shows interrupted, but then it would show the timer. Now this is obviously quick play, things are going to die very, very quickly. And much like WoW Dungeons, you want to give your tank time to gather everything up. Ooh, got hit by that. That's my bad. You can see they drop, you know, little things. There's like this shadow lava ability. And you can see there it has the cooldown timer for when my kick ability is coming back up. So, and you can see from a damage meter standpoint, like I've never played this character before, and I have no item level. So like it's possible that, like, for example, this guy, he's got 35 item level, so he's just outgears me straight up, which is why he does more damage. So little things like that, like that's the thing, like people like automatically are automatically going to assume that, like, oh, you don't do any damage, but like there's a lot of things, like gear matters so much in this version of the game, which some people love, some people hate. If you don't like the fact that, like, having more gear obviously makes you do a lot more damage, then you're fine. I don't even have my ultimate ability because you have to unlock that through your talents, which is kind of why I'm showing this off now, because that is going to matter here in a little bit. But even then, you can see I'm keeping up with characters that have gear. So, like, you can, quote-unquote, not know what you're doing, and as long as you kind of understand the basics of, like, a dungeon crawl, you can see abilities right underneath my feet, then you're going to be quite okay. It's not going to be a problem at all. Like, he's coming down and pulling these. We don't need to do that. Here's Glacial Blast. We'll just fire it off on that character there, just because it'll be fun. Then we got our orbs. We'll burn our orbs here. Do as much damage as we can. Alright, and then come up to a single boss. Like, I started this dungeon around 27 minutes in the video. Now, this boss is always interesting because there are things that people don't know about this boss that they should. So we see this moose going around us. Basically, we have to protect that moose. So this is an ability that everyone stands in, ideally, and you soak it. As you get in higher levels, it's going to be more mandatory. As you can see, he does that, and it goes all the way out. You don't want to hit your moose friend with that. So, like, these really cool, like, mechanics that I think are really nice. Some of the dungeons are, like, quite well done in terms of how they flash their mechanics. Now, not everything is that way. Some mechanics are quite not, like, well telegraphed or well explained. And if you die to something, you don't have a way to be able to show off. But that's the other thing. So like this right here, you want to aim it on our friend here, but you're going to see tank's not going to do that. And you can see our buddy's taking damage here. But we completed the dungeon, and it took about 6 minutes. Dungeons in quick play are extremely short. And then they get longer as you move up in difficulties. Now, let's talk about some of the other aspects of the game and what do I think of them. From the dungeon standpoint overall, there's like some bosses that are kind of annoying, one or two bosses that are kind of annoying, but for the most part, I think all of them are pretty fair, especially once you figure out what they do, and then as you move up in levels, they get more mechanics to where the stuff that's on like Eternal or the highest levels are very similar to what raid bosses actually can do in WoW with, you know, 3, 4, or 5 mechanics, or dungeon bosses do at Mythic Plus level. Now, let's show you this. When we're talking about dungeons, there are levels, and I mentioned levels. So there are levels. So there is quick play, which very much like just go in. You can see we get a little bit of reward in some currency that you can redeem later on. There's contender level dungeons, which allow you to have like a timer, but are very low level dungeons. Honestly, I would equate them to like the equivalent of heroic dungeons. There's the adept level, which you have to get to a certain item level to be able to unlock. Champion, and then Paragon, which, as you can see, the more gear you have, the harder the content that you get. And then, of course, there's Eternal mode, which is the hardest and highest mode out there. Now, in order to get to these dungeons, there is a dungeon pool. That's not what I meant. We'll get to that in a minute. So there's a dungeon pool. As you can see, we have the rotation. There's Wormheart, Stormwatch, Sailor's Abyss, Empyrean Sands, Uruk Markets, Everdawn Grove, and Godfall Quarry, and Silken Hollow. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8 dungeons now, and I'm sure they're going to probably release more with seasons, maybe one more dungeon, to where you could potentially have as many as, 10 or 12, or maybe they take a couple out of rotation. They haven't announced any official plans for that yet. So the goal basically is if you want to try to score all of these, and then they have what are called capstone dungeons. So Sithra's Fall is the one for the Contender League, Heart of Tizari is for Adept, Wraithtide Vault for Champion, and Ransack of Jokheim for Paragon. These are 3 boss dungeons for the most part. I've done Sithra's Fall and Heart of Tizari. These are 3 boss dungeons that also have count and are much more equivalent to any standard WoW Mythic Plus. 3 bosses, long timers, 26, 27 minutes. Mobs have all sorts of abilities. You have to time your cooldowns right. You have to time your healing right. You have to get your kicks organized and stuff like that. Lots of debuffs that go out and things of that nature. Like, they're much more equivalent to what you would expect in a WoW scenario. Now, what do I think of these dungeons overall? Actually, all of them are pretty good. There's like 1 or 2, like I believe it's Uruk Markets, that the last boss, or the boss that's in it, is kind of unintuitive at the beginning. Silken Hollow, we just did that one, so you saw that. No, excuse me, we did Everdon Grove. Sorry, Silken Hollow, I think, has a boss that's there. Sailor's Abyss, the last boss, is actually one of my favorites because it has a very cool mechanic. Again, that if you're not completely aware of it, is there. And that's one thing that the game doesn't do a good job of. Like, there's no way to, like, click on these dungeons and find out what's going on. So you can, like, read ahead and be like, okay, what are the basics ability of bosses? Or what are the basic ability of mobs that we should look into? They kind of expect you to learn by doing, which, again, some people might be okay with, some people may not be okay with. It just kind of depends. And then as you get your dungeon score, that allows you to unlock different rewards, and then, of course, it also guarantees that you'll get items. Now, you saw at the end of this dungeon, I got some supplies and a Mark of Fellowship. As you do contender level dungeons and stuff like that, you're actually guaranteed to get gear. Well, how do you get gear before then? Well, this is where Stronghold comes into play. Stronghold's a little interesting. It's not very well laid out, in my opinion. It has a map, which, like, helps, and obviously you can see there's, like, room for areas that they're looking to potentially expand upon it as they move further into their series. But, like, the big thing that they don't do a great job of is totally explaining this. It's like a tutorial quest that will show you this, but it's not. So for, like, this character, if I wanted to get more gear, I could come here and get some starter equipment that's item level 15, so that I can, begin to gain, not even getting really stats. You just gain some stuff out of it. Like, I've got 21 supplies. So for example, let me just buy the arms real quick. So you can see it turns into a staff, because that's what Rime uses. It gives expertise and spirit, gives some stamina, and gives some intellect. As you can see now, I've jumped from 0.5 or 0.4 to 1.4 item level. So this is what you use initially. And then I also have some of these Mark of Valors from 75 because I've gotten some progression on them, which I'm going to use mainly for Sylvie when I get to her, because she's the character I'm going for next. So I have a tank, a healer, and a DPS that are all adept level capable. So this is how you, like, can buy gear, but then you also get drops from every dungeon. There are cosmetics that you can gain as well for every character, that if you save up supplies, you can do that. And then they also have supply boxes, which allow you to gain some of the other materials that you'll need to upgrade higher level items. There is ability to change up your mount. So you can see I've got a couple of these unlocked. These 2 I bought. This one's the default one that everyone gets. You get this one from completing stuff in the Contender League. There's another one that you get for doing, and then I got this Scryer's Warhorse because I did Twitch drops. But then if you get things like, you get Broom, which they gave for a Halloween event. They have this Prowler, which, was unlocked during Steam Fest, which unfortunately I missed. You can link your account and get this steed, which I need to do. And then you get, like, the upper level packs, which cost more than the base game. You get the base game plus some extra cosmetic rewards. There's no power involved in it. Alright, so let's look at your basic reward structure. Oh, and there's also things like gems and equipment, which, get into the later game. But for the purposes of this video, which has already gone on 40 minutes, I want to be able to kind of just explain, like, a lot of the baseline stuff. Alright, so let's look into the reward system. You see this button's glowing. So for simply completing a dungeon, any dungeon, you can unlock your first mount. As you can see, I've done Sithra's Fall, so we get this. Once I actually time Heart of Tizari, I've not timed it yet on Elarion. I'll get this Bloodfang Matriarch, which I love this mount. I love the look of it. And then as you can see, as you go up, you get Wrathtide Vault, you get this very cool rat, and then with Drakheim, you get this bear, but personally, I love this mount. Now there's 3 ways that this tree branches out. So you have like just timing and your mount stuff. There's this section which goes up, where as you reach item level 5, you gain more stuff, and then you can do stuff in the Contenders League, and then you get, as you achieve dungeon score, you gain different items. So you get random equipment, or you gain a mark, some extra marks, some materials, talent points, which we'll talk about in a second. And at the end of every one, there is a transmog, essentially, cosmetic set that you gain for completing every set. And it goes all the way up here to the Eternal Armor mode, which you can get some very cool mounts here. The Widow, the Bloodfang, Dark Warden Disguise. Like, this is the hardest stuff in the game, so you get, the most cosmetics out of it, and gems and stuff like that. And then this side of the tree right here is actually your character progression through your reward structure. So I've now completed a dungeon, which means I now unlock a new ability. This is your hero ability, so for her, it's Wrath of Winter. As you complete dungeons, so this is where things like quick play come into play, because you can unlock all these abilities. So I'll unlock talent rows, I'll unlock talent points, I'll get, Ice Blitz here is like your cooldown. It gives me 20% more damage. Flight of the Navir gives me extra damage. You have things like Frigid Winds, which gives a little, like, your 1 CC ability. And then you have Winter's Blessing here, which basically gives you a spirit buff and replicates your damage as healing. So it gives her very much, like, one of the reasons she's one of the best DPS is this ability here. And then you unlock, again, even more talent points. And then as you get to the top of this, you just get some currency, random item, level 90 weapon, and then of course you get another easy cosmetic stuff. So you unlock all of your abilities just simply by doing dungeons, but you unlock all of them by the time you do 9 dungeons. So you can sit there and just play quick play 9 times in a row and get there. So I believe I have, oh yeah, I gotta unlock those on her. Even though I have these already, like, it'll flash. Now, let me switch characters over to Elarion, because he's the one that I have the most unlocked on. I mentioned talent points. You saw them there. So every character does have a talent road. Now, you unlock this through character progression and dungeon score, and you get them. Now, the thing that's different about the WoW talent trees, obviously you can see this much more relates to the MOP talent trees than it does the current WoW talent trees. The thing that's different about this is that you have to unlock the rows as you go up, but then you also unlock points, and the maximum amount that you get right now is 13. And as you can notice, there's these little numbers right here next to all of these. That's how many talent points these cost. Now, the thing that's different about the Fellowship talent trees is, for example, if I wanted to grab this talent, notice I can still grab all 3 of those if I wanted. So you do have the ability to unlock multiple talent rows. You get multiple talents on the same row if it's for a build that it works out really, really well for you. And then have all different things that hit different things. So, like, for example, in this first row, this is putting a lot into your focus shot, which is your generator, which causes your multi-shot, which is this button here, to be able to do more. Fusillade makes it so that your Heartseeker Barrage gets better crit, has a little bit of a longer channel, and Final Crescendo basically plays off of your ricochet ability. So this is the build that I run right now, just because I only have 8 points out of the 13. But, there's all sorts of different things. So you kind of have to pick and choose, read your abilities, and min-max your costs. So, like, this build right now, I can get at 8 talent points, but when I was at 7, I wasn't able to grab, so if I wanted these 3, that's 2, 4, 5. At 7, I'd grab something like Fusillade, because I didn't have enough points to be able to gain Fervent Supremacy or Resurgent Winds or whatever the case may be. But here I do have Fervent Supremacy because I like it a lot. I like this build that I'm playing quite a bit. So there are guides out there that I will obviously show you. I know Method has some really good one. Icy Veins has some guides out there, though I don't like their layout all that much. If you're looking for guides just to help you understand like what the playstyles are out there, you can kind of play it a little bit, or you can just experiment and mess around with it. Oh, they do have a Dungeon Codex. This is actually was just added. That's what I got. See? So the cool thing about this is, like, now you can go in and see what the overview is, and then but it doesn't give you things like Sithra's Fall, which kind of gives you the overview of the dungeon, but mainly you would use it for loot. And you can actually choose, okay, what level am I going to look at? Is it Contender 3, Contender 6? Now, these are not like every single mode because the eye levels do go up at certain levels. So like Contender 1, 2, 3, you're gaining item level 30. At Contender 6, you get 60. So Contender 6, Contender 7, and Adept 1. You're always getting 60 item levels, and then it goes up to 90 and a higher quality. Adept 5, 105, and then in Champion, it goes up to Epic with some legendary items, which those are a late game feature. So you can look at that and kind of see what loot you're looking for and try to target accordingly. You see your talents. Gems are a system that come later in the game, and then of course you can see the dungeon scores that I've done for this and what the highest level I've timed it at. So you can see I've got a couple, like Everdawn Grove, I timed it at 5. I had 11 minutes. We did it with 1050. But you notice the timers on these: 1311, 1438, 1137, 1204. Almost none of these dungeons, with the exception of this capstone dungeon, are longer than 15 minutes. So these dungeon runs are very short and very quick. So if you're like someone like, I know, like one of my family members, for example, has been begging for like sub 30-minute dungeons. Like that's his ideal goal. He wants stuff that is sub 30. I honestly believe he would find something like this really good because these dungeons are sub 15 minutes. And if you have a group, you can just chain queue them super, super quick. And really go. Like you can queue for stuff as a solo player, but then, you know, like for me, I could queue for Adept and it would just queue me in for people that are roughly my item level, roughly the same dungeon score as me. That's kind of how they base it off of. And then it gives us a choice of 3 dungeons that we can do in order to, and the group kind of votes for whichever one they want. The majority that the people pick is the one that we will do. But if you're in a full 4-person group, you can target stuff. So like, for example, I'm in a group and I'm like, hey, I've got a really low score right now in Sailor's Abyss. I could really use an Adept Sailor's Abyss one because I'm only a Contender 4 one. I never did it on Contender 5 or 6. My group can then pick, okay, we're going to do an Adept 4 for Sailor's Abyss. And we time it. I get dungeon score out of it. And also we get like, you know, cool stuff. So you can kind of pick and target everyone much like you can for like IO. Except instead of having to get a mythic key and kind of play a little bit of RNG with mythic keys, then you can instead just pick the dungeon that you want, which I really like. I would love for WoW to have that kind of system in place where it's like, hey, we've got a full 5-person group. Here's the max level that we've done. So for example, on my warrior, I've done a 15 key. I've done Ecodump 15. So it'll give me the option to do Ecodump 16, or I'm Resilient 14s. I can do 15s of every other dungeon. You know, or, you know, you give me like, hey, I've done 15 as the max, so all dungeons can be done at 16. And then you get to pick and choose the dungeon that you have rather than doing a key system. Now, the key system would still be useful because you can still target keys because they don't have a queue system in WoW, so you still need your key system to work. But I would love for a thing where if you're in a full pre-made group, you get the ability to target whatever dungeon you want. So like if I'm in a group, we're trying to get, say, our 3200, we want to do that in Gambit or Streets because those are dungeons that we've got, you know, plans accordingly that we think would work. We'd be able to do that. So WoW doesn't have that, but Fellowship does. And that's actually one of the things I like about Fellowship. So we saw a little bit of gameplay. We've seen like the basic reward structure system. Let's talk about upgrading systems. So there are 2 ways to upgrade your system. One, you can scrap old gear. So say like I get I got a pair of this eye level 75 ring. It's a good ring. I can upgrade it. But say I get one that's item level 120 that has, say, haste crit on it. I would replace it, and then this item would just sit in my bags. You can go over here and scrap them, and you get some currency back. Obviously, I'm not going to do that because I don't have anything to scrap. The other side that you can do is you come over here to the blacksmith, and you can drop items in here. So let's just look at this ring, for example. I've only got a small amount of gold because this currency is account-wide. It's not bound to your character. So you can actually somewhat abuse the system by playing like a bunch of quick plays on like low level characters that you're not really intending to do much with, and really set up like your gold and supplies and build those up quite a bit in order to help upgrade your character. But as you can see, these have upgrade tracks up to 8 at a time, and they get more and more cost in terms of gold, or in the case of something like let's see, let's look at these bracers. Bracers, they have the gold here. Let's see, is there one? No, that's just gold. I don't think I have anything that is going to be... But some items, like, let's just use this for example. This one's upgraded max. Say I drop this in and this could go up another level. There's going to be things like materia, or magic essence, or unstable mithril, things like that that you'll need to help boost and upgrade items. So you have to collect all these materials to try and upgrade your items. And you can, again, buy them from these vendors that are over here if you need to. As you get higher up under the thing, you can buy some of these stuff through things like marker fellowships and things like that. It'll give you some of the stuff that you need, or you can obtain them just from doing dungeons. Now, the one cool thing that I love about Fellowship that I wish Blizzard would also do is everybody gets an item at the end. It's not a situation where, like in WoW dungeons, you might do 10 dungeons and the only thing you're going to get out of it is like 120 gold out of every end box. You never get a single item. You just get your crests and you get your gold. Here, everyone's guaranteed to get an item. Now, that doesn't mean that it's always going to be an item that's good. For example, I might get, like, you know, a weapon here that's like, this is expertise spirit. It's not the greatest stats. Elarion really likes haste. Doesn't really want anything to do with spirit. But say I get a weapon that has, let's just say, haste and an expertise on it. I can do that. But I might also get a situation where I'm doing a dungeon and I get like a spirit expertise helm. Well, that weapon, that doesn't do me any good. But it's not a complete waste, because then I can scrap it for currency and use that to potentially upgrade another item. So there is like an upgrade system that is very much what I feel like WoW is trying to trend towards too, with the removal of things like Valor Stones. You just worry about your crests. But I would love a system where you can take, where everyone gets an item, but if you don't like that item, you can either sell it for gold, or you can scrap it for like if it's a, you know, champion track item, you get rune crest out of it. Or if it's a hero track item, or excuse me, it would be a carved if it was like champion, and then like a hero track item you can scrap for ruined, and then myth track items you can scrap for gilded. Something like that, so that you're always kind of making gear progression, I think is really good. And that's the one thing I love about Fellowship, is that every dungeon that I complete, I'm always doing something towards gear progression, whether it's, you know, upgrading, you know, getting a brand new item that I'm completely replacing, or just upgrading an item, go from there. That said, overall, so like we've gone through like some stuff in great detail. Let's kind of do a TLDR. What are the positives of Fellowship? Honestly, a lot of the classes, as someone that cares quite a bit about class gameplay, a lot of the classes play pretty well. There are some that I don't connect with. I don't connect with Vikor all that well. I don't really care for Tark, and I don't really care for Mako. There are aspects of Artios that I don't like, aspects of Mara that I don't like, aspects of Rime that I just want to explore more. I just haven't yet. But like some of the classes that I really enjoy, I enjoy a lot. Like I love Elarion. I love Sylvie. Helena has been growing and growing and growing on me. Oh, probably just a bug. You know, it goes from there. But so the progression system is really good. I really like the way the dungeons feel. They're short. You know, the higher up in levels that you go, the more abilities get added on for every character. Oh, that's right. They made the change where you have to be 80 to go into the higher levels. I forgot about that. And the devs really do seem like they're taking in a lot of the player feedback. Like they buffed Helena quite a bit just in the last 24 hours as of recording, to make her feel like much more in line with Mako. Like for a small sample with, you know, this right here, the sweeping strike ability puts a bleed on all your targets, but also makes it so that they do 10% less damage to her for that duration. That really helps her tankiness. They gave her a base stamina buff, so she's now, you know, just higher up. And then when you use things like shields up, you know, you gain additional block capacity and stuff like that. So there's a lot of things that they do quite well in terms of trying to tune these. Now there are some things that they need to continue to reconcile with, and I'm sure as new champions or new characters get released, it's gonna throw wrenches into all of the plans that they've had and stuff like that. So we'll see. But I'm confident so far based on what I've seen, where all the characters like Elarion was released post, was not, you know, it's the latest character. He released in a pretty good state. He wasn't completely broken. He wasn't completely useless. He's just in a good spot. He obviously has Like, to me, he's like the most well-rounded character. He doesn't really have a true weakness. His single target is pretty decent. His AoE is really good. He's got decent survivability with the one defensive cooldown that everybody gets. He's got good mobility with roll. He can cast it on the move, which, you know, Rime and Artios cannot do without instance. So, like, he's a very well-balanced character, for example. You know, they have had to do some characters, like Sylvia's gotten quite a few buffs over the time frame. Mara just got some buffs, I believe, recently as well that tried to help her out. So, like, they're very much conscious of tuning and things of that nature. And as more, you know, characters come in, I'm hoping that or heroes come in, I'm hoping that we get more diverse playstyles and stuff like that. Dungeon design, I think overall is pretty good. A lot of the abilities are very much very telegraphed, as you can tell from the dungeon that I did, where you can very easily see when you're being targeted by an ability, or when you're being you know, by a ground effect, or when you have a ground effect that you need to move out of. I love the ability to mark your interrupt so that you can, so that people can see, okay, this is the one that I've got, and this is when my mark is, you know, it's coming up. Now, in a communicated, you know, group that communicates, like, we could say, hey, I've got the Rune of Disintegration or whatever. But in pickup group type situations, this is super valuable. I love that they do this. I want WoW to do something similar. From a UI standpoint, they've been making a lot of work on it. I do like that click casting is on by default. So, for example, on a healer, let me just swap over to Sylvie, for example. So, like, on a healer, if I'm targeting, say, like this target dummy, and then I need to throw a heal onto me, I can just hover over my frame and heal myself. And I love that. And then still go. So I don't lose track of the target that I'm on. I'm not constantly clicking and then having to bounce around. So, like, mouse over macros or mouse over casting is on by default with the healers, which is amazing. Other than that, from a UI standpoint, you have the ability to edit the HUD. You know, there's options that are not there. I would like to make chat a little bit smaller, for example. Boss unit frames, you can move all this stuff around. Important hero buffs, I'm going to move here because that's where I want it. And you can save it. You can do different UI imports and stuff like that. I've been experimenting with it. I kind of like the default the way that it is. Does really well for me. Built-in damage meters. Their nameplates, there is something about their nameplates that I don't like, and that is the fact that you can't see who a cast is targeting, which as a healer is kind of important, especially for a healer like Sylvie. So, like, say this I Miss My Wife guy is being targeted by this training dummy with a cast. I would love to be able to see who it's targeting so that I can then say, okay, we're going to let this bolt go through. It's going to go through on my melee DPS. I now know, good, all right, I need to prep him with a Flutterfly or with a Restore Life, so that I can just kind of prep that damage to someone like Sylvie that really values it. So I'd like to see that out of their UI. But overall, other than that, they've been making little tweaks to their UIs every patch that have done quite well. Things like the important buffs. They've actually fixed this quite a bit. It used to be like this huge long bar. It was like your buffs were up here, your debuffs were over here. They're all over the place. And now they make it so that, like, you can kind of just see, like, what's going on here. You can, you know, adjust them. They don't have a snap thing yet to where, like, you can anchor everything, and the grid doesn't have, like, the market across the middle and down the middle, which I would like to see. So the UI is, I think, pretty solid. Honestly, my biggest complaints about this game is right now lack of hero diversity, but it is in early access, so we want to be able to take a look at that and allow time for that to happen. They don't have something like a profanity filter. Like, obviously, some of us are adults, like being able to see the swear words and stuff like that is going to be helpful. I would like to see a little bit more diversity in their music. Their music is kind of samey. I had it off because I usually will listen to other songs while I'm doing that. And I wish they would do a little bit more to explain things better, like the upgrade system, the gem system. Like, you know, I've got gems on Elarion. I don't really fully understand what they do, even though I don't have gear that does it. I wish they would kind of explain the progress system, things like legendary weapons and those things that, you know, you get a weapon upgrade track system that goes on further down the line. But again, that's more advanced level stuff. So overall, as a WoW player that does a lot of Mythic Plus, would I recommend Fellowship? My answer is yes, I would. If you want to pay out, you know, I think it's 25 bucks. You can pay more if you want to do some of the starter kit for some extra cosmetics. But the characters in the game are fun. The dungeons are short. Would I say, hey, commit to this as like the main game that you play? This is like the number one game you stream, number one game that you play. I don't know that it fits that category yet. I think it's a little lacking on systems. Now they've announced that they want to do like 8-player raids down the line and stuff like that. Obviously that could now make that much more appealing, especially if they allow for some in-game communities to be built in, whether it's like a guild type system or whatever the case may be. That could be interesting. I don't know if I would commit to it as a main game, especially if you still love WoW like I do. Like when Midnight releases, I'm probably not touching Fellowship for quite a while, because I want to be leveling characters. I want to be getting early progression systems done. And if I get to a point where it's like, okay, I've completed like everything that I want to complete in WoW for the week, then okay, maybe I want to come play Fellowship. So unless you like really fall in love with this game, I wouldn't recommend doing your main game, especially if you still love something like WoW, or you like you know, other kind of online co-op style games. Like if you play a lot of Peak, or you play a lot of Are We There Yet, things, you know, some of these games that are like the hot flavor of the month style games, I wouldn't do it. But if they manage their seasons right, the devs of Fellowship manage their seasons correctly to where they kind of can time them to be in downtime between WoW, we can. Now that's not always going to be ideal, because they need to kind of keep to their cadence schedule. Like, you know, they're looking to do a patch in December. That's roughly 2 months after release. If they're looking to do another kind of season in 2 months, that would put it mid-February. That basically puts it right when we expect Midnight to release, which means that season is probably going to see very little to no play, because everyone's going to be grinding WoW. WoW's still the most popular online MMO type game out there. And like I said, this one, it does get repetitive content because all you have to do is the dungeons. There's no open world content that you can do. There's no profession type content, anything like that. Like WoW is always kind of an interesting game, because even though someone like me who loves doing Mythic Plus, loves doing raids, I can still log on and do some world content if I just want to play WoW or get some of the cosmetics that are being chased and stuff like that. So on a scale out of 10, what would I rate Fellowship? Honestly, I'm going to put it at around a 7. I think it's not, there's some things that it needs to improve on, but the devs, I think, are very aware of them. Once they get more classes and they really have to start thinking about how their metas are going to shake out, I think that's where Fellowship has the strength to be potentially very good. But the fact that it has very short dungeons, it has a progression system in terms of gearing that is very favorable to the player, doesn't put arbitrary markers on you other than some RNG, which that's fine. I love their progression systems in terms of gear. Everyone gets an item, whether it's useful or not is a different thing, but at the very least, you're always getting something out of every dungeon run. I would love for something like WoW to honestly adopt that. Take some ideas from Fellowship here. But like I said, it's not perfect. There are some weird bugs that happen. They have some bugs still where, like, I've sent friend requests out to somebody, for example, and they're like, yeah, I never got it. I sent it like 5 times and they never got it. So they have some weird stuff like that that needs to be fixed. There's a weird bug where, you know, if you were a party of 4, everyone leaves the dungeon, and then one person's like, hey, I gotta go. And then you requeue, like say you requeue without a DPS, you'll actually only requeue with 3 people instead of 4. And so it would actually try to send you into the dungeon with only 3 people. And that sometimes sucks, because like if it's your tank, you're trying to find another tank, then you're going into a dungeon with no tank. So little bugs like that they need to fix, but like those aren't, like, there's nothing game breaking about this game. So I think it's overall a really good game. You know, a lot of people will call it like a WoW clone. I don't actually think it's a WoW clone. I think it's very inspired by WoW. And there are definitely some concepts and character ideas that are, you know, either ripped off from WoW. Like Mara is very much a subtlety rogue in almost every form and fashion, but like there's enough differences in how they approach her gameplay loop that it's not like a copy paste. It's not like an Ascension, for example, Ascension WoW, where you're quote unquote creating your own character, but like they basically just took all the WoW abilities and then copy pasted them, and you create something out of existing WoW abilities. which I think is kind of weird. I've seen people play it, and it just doesn't make sense to me. This, they let the characters have their own unique gameplay styles, even though their archetypes are very familiar to people from World of Warcraft in general. So my opinion is, if you have 20-25 bucks to spare, or you want to throw this on like a Steam wish list with, you know, it's November 7th as I record this, so Christmas is literally like, you know, a month and a half away. You know, we're talking 6 weeks until Christmas. If you want to throw this on a wish list for your, you know, maybe one of your friends or family to gift this to you, I think that's a worthy investment. And then you can just take some time, play around with all the characters, find which one you like, and then push and grind as you want to on this character. You can play this game. I played pretty casually. Like I said, I've only got about 30 hours on this game. And I've been able to get into, you know, with Elarion in particular, I've been able to get into, you know, the add-up level, which is where a lot of the player base is right now. You know, and I'm actually not that, I mean, item level 130, I'm not that far from being able to unlock champion and continuing to push. And like I said, I've only played for about 30 hours, and I played through, you know, let's see, I played Helena extensively, tried Mako, I've actually tried all the characters, but like Helena, Elarion, Sylvie, Artios, Mara, and Rime will be coming up soon as well. Plus whatever new character they release. I've messed around with Tarek a little bit. I need to look him up, figure out how to play him. But like, even without like focusing solely on one character, I've gotten quite a bit of progression out of this game, and it's not that hard to do. So it's like a good like way to like do thing, like if you're a Mythic Plus enjoyer, it's a good way to like do dungeons without the kind of thing that's developed in WoW, where if you don't have your guild group to play with or something like that, you just end up sitting in the LFG queue for like an hour trying to find a group, especially for DPS, especially if you're not quote-unquote meta DPS. You spend so long trying to find a group that it's, you know, more of a simulator than an actually MMO game. Fellowship is not like that with the queue system. Now, the queue system isn't perfect. You'll have people that will dodge queues because maybe the dungeon they're seeking doesn't come up when they're picking up groups. Generally speaking, I think the tank players are divas in this game, and they're usually the quickest to abandon dungeons. You know, it's usually because they tried to pull way too much and didn't take the necessary steps to survive that type of pull. And then healers are usually the next quickest to go. Like DPS, I've discovered, are actually the least diva-ish, which is kind of weird because WoW, they're the most diva. But like tanks and healers in this game, like generally speaking, that's not a developer problem, that's a community problem. But like, you know, the queue system, like it's fine, it's functional. I don't think it's the healthiest way to play this game long term. But if you're someone that's like, you know, I've got a couple of hours on the weekend that I want to play before I need to go do something with my kids, or you know, I just want to get a couple dungeon runs in and don't want to spend an hour trying to find that group, like this is the perfect type of game for you, honestly. And then if you want to take it seriously and try to climb like the rankings in the leaderboard, you can do that. So yeah, I would definitely say, yeah, 7 out of 10, but a lot of room for improvement, and I think the devs are very much aware of what those improvements need to be and are making the steps accordingly. So if you played Fellowship, let me know what you think. I appreciate you sticking around for over this hour-long review, introduction/review of Fellowship. If you want to see more of this content, if you want to see me do little guides on some characters that I enjoy playing, or do more in-depth things on like the little systems of Fellowship, let me know in the comments below. Like, share, subscribe, share this, comment, all that fun stuff that helps make these videos more seen. If you want to see me do more Fellowship content, I'm very much open to doing that, and just kind of enjoying Fellowship for what it is right now. So until the next video, hope you all stay safe, hope you enjoy yourself, you're having fun, you keep on gaming, and we'll see you next time.